Hello, I am Peter Okoche. Welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. As the number of coronavirus cases globally passes 7.5 million, the World Health Organization warns the pandemic is still escalating. COVID fact or fake? BBC Africa launches an online tool to debunk the myths around coronavirus. Israel's first black minister tells Focus on Africa how she'll use her new position to help the Ethiopian Jewish community.
There is thousands of people from my community, from Beta Israel, that waited in Ethiopia and they want to come to Israel. So it is one of my goals to bring them home.
Also on the program, an African first. It's 10 years since the World Cup was held in South Africa, but was it the springboard that African football hoped for? Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. As countries around the world ease their coronavirus lockdown restrictions, the World Health Organization has warned that they are continuing to see an escalation in the pandemic globally, especially in low and middle income countries. They say that women and children who struggle to access health resources at the best of times are most at risk. They're asking any nation working on a vaccine to make it available to every other country should they be successful as a global public good. Well, according to the latest figures from our website tracking the outbreak on the continent, there are just under 200,000 confirmed infections. One of the factors which directly and indirectly contributes to the spread of the virus is the huge amount of fake news and myths. It's such a problem that the World Health Organization calls it an infodemic. So BBC Africa is now launching a searchable library of fact checks debunking popular myths and misinformation about COVID-19 in Africa. Well, to tell us more, we can now speak to Yemisi Adegoke from BBC Africa. Yemisi, tell us more about the COVID-19 Misinformation Hub and how it will work.
So we're collating some of the most viral pieces of misinformation on the continent, and we're housing them in our Misinformation Hub. Users can search the fact check library by keyword, country, and category. And the aim is to make these fact checks as shareable as some of the fake news we're seeing itself. We've done this through the help of our designers who have made these really beautiful graphics to go with really tightly written fact checks. Most importantly, these checks are easily shared on WhatsApp and other platforms where we know misinformation spreads quickly.
So what are some of these misleading messages that you've seen or heard online?
Well, we've seen so many, and they cover so many different categories. We've got cures, prevention, hoaxes, myths. A popular one that's spread on the continent claiming to be a prevention method is about inhaling hot steam, that's considered an effective treatment for coronavirus. It was even endorsed by the president of Tanzania. But experts have said that doing this kind of thing is very, very dangerous and is not, it's not proven to be an effective treatment at all. Another claim widely spread in Kenya, which was also endorsed by the governor of Nairobi, which said that consuming alcohol kills the virus. The World Health Organization has said that that is not true. It doesn't protect, drinking alcohol doesn't protect against coronavirus, but using alcohol-based hand sanitizer can be used to clean your hands, but consuming it does not actually help.
And what exactly do you hope to achieve with this information hub?
Well, I mean, the main aim is that we want to equip people with the right sort of information so that they can make, adequate decisions about their health, well-informed choices. An important part of our fact-checking project is that we are sharing our methodology so people can see how we've debunked these myths, and hopefully that they can apply some of these methods and tools into their own lives. And we also hope to scale up the project and get the audience involved through social media. We want people to share the sort of fake news and misinformation they're seeing in their own networks so that we can hopefully get to the stage where we are countering this misinformation before it spreads too widely.
Okay, Yemisi Adegoke from BBC Africa speaking to us live there from Lagos. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to do a bit of fact checking yourself, please go to bbc.com/Africa and you'll find our online resource right there. Now let's take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. Burundi's constitutional court has ruled that the country's newly elected president and not the speaker will succeed Pierre Nkurunziza, who died suddenly earlier this week. It ruled that there was no need for the Speaker of Parliament to take over as interim leader as laid out in the constitution. The court said that Evariste Ndayishimiye, who was due to be inaugurated in August, should be sworn in as soon as possible. The top administrative court in France has ruled that a researcher can consult the archives of the former President François Mitterrand relating to the Rwanda genocide of 1994. The court said the documents would shed light on a matter of public interest. Previous attempts to gain access to the archives have been denied. Rwanda has accused Mr. Mitterrand's government of complicity in the killings. All 36 state governors in Nigeria have declared a state of emergency on rape in the country. There's been a national outcry following a spate of high-profile rape cases across Nigeria. The governors called for the harshest possible punishment for convicted rapists. Many Nigerians say the country's legal system makes it hard to convict suspected rapists and blames women when they are victims of sexual assault. Now, Israel recently named its first black minister. Ethiopian-born Penina Tamano-Shatta was appointed immigration minister last month as part of a power-sharing agreement with the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. 39-year-old Miss Tamano-Shatta was 3 when she moved to Israel in 1984 as part of a dramatic secret evacuation of 8,000 Ethiopian Jews from Sudan. Israel's Ethiopian Jewish community is one of the poorest in the country, with high rates of unemployment. I asked her how her new position would help that community.
As a woman, as a Jew, as a black person, I can tell you that our struggle, my community struggle here in Israel, it is also based on people that born here, educated here, and still because their blackness, they feel that they have glass ceiling, they feel that they're attacked by people only based for our color. And this struggle is so important, but I don't feel that it is only my struggle because I'm the only black in the cabinet. I believe that it is the struggle of all the government, all the cabinet.
The journey is still long. There's a common battle that black people all over the world are fighting, more especially during this period. It's really come to light. How will your new position help your community?
We know that there is a lot of immigrants that wait to come back home to Israel. And we see that there is thousands of people from my community, from Beta Israel, that waited in Ethiopia and they want to come to Israel. So it is one of my goals to bring them home.
How easy or how difficult will that job of yours be to try and relocate them, just as you relocated so many years ago?
I came to Israel when I was 3 years old. It was a different times. In the 80s, we made a journey, me and my family and my community. We made a very hard journey from Ethiopia to Sudan until we arrived to Israel. It is not the same. We walk all the way to Sudan until we came to here with the help of the Israeli army and Mossad, the secret agents of Israel. Today, it is easier because it was only 4 hours flight to here. But unfortunately, we have a check that we need to do. We have examination about the source of the people that waited, if their source is from Beta Israel, if they are really Jew, and all these things.
And Minister, let's just look to the United States of America now, Israel's largest ally. We've seen the recent protest over racial discrimination and racial inequalities and injustice in that country by African Americans. Is there anything that your community, the black community in Israel, can learn from those protests?
The source of the struggle is the same. There is also the differences. Okay, in Israel, I think that the situation is better. And in Israel, when you try to change something, the policy that I lead in 2016, after a big demonstration of my community, we see that we change things. We see that something changed in the reality. In 2015, you can find that 40% from the youth that sit in the jail was from Ethiopian community. Today, it is only 10%. It is not enough. And we need to work hard to decrease this amount, but we do something. Unfortunately, in the United States, it seems that it goes harder, and I think that they have things that they can learn from us.
Tamano Shatta there, Israel's new immigration minister. Now, Tanzania's tourism industry, which had been badly affected by the coronavirus pandemic, is now reopening for business. But the government has been accused of putting the lives of its citizens at risk by declaring the country COVID-19 free too early. Speaking live on this program yesterday, Tourism Minister Hamisi Kigwangalla refuted these allegations and said the government had put various measures in place to ensure the safety of both tourists and locals. So, what's the current situation on the ground? The BBC's Abubakar Famau sent this report.
This is Arusha, gateway to some Tanzania's and Africa's most popular tourist attractions. From safari adventures to world-famous national parks. But like so many local economies dependent on tourism, the pandemic kept visitors away. Hotels stood empty and thousands of people working in the sector were left worrying about the future. But now, as Tanzania begins to open up to tourists, there is some hope. The people and businesses of Arusha have reason to smile as the first visitors return. In a move to reassure those who come to visit, safety protocols have been put in place. These ambulances are new. Safari vehicles are sprayed with disinfectant before and after each trip, and a hospital has received new equipment to help deal with any patients. As the restaurants, bars, and hotels slowly come to life again, safety protocols have been the key here too.
At least when we come to the restaurant, we serve a la carte, not buffet anymore, and each client is served by one person. We don't change as we used to do.
Despite the cautious optimism, the new measures mean holidays here are going to feel different. The question is, will the new reality of social distancing affect the flow of visitors? This is one of the local markets here in Arusha, where tourists would normally flock in to buy different souvenirs. But since it was reopened, very few have come in. Not quite the normal flood the local businesses would hope for. But for some tourists, the changes to their holiday or indeed the corona pandemic hasn't put them off.
For me, there is no problem at all, and I don't know anybody who's been sick or died or anything, so I feel absolutely safe here.
Operators here are hoping that more people like Karen will come if their countries relax their own restrictions.
The challenge which we're facing at the moment is the source markets. In the source market, there are still some restrictions in some parts of the countries or even in the entire continent of Europe.
As the hotel staff here work to get the changes in place, all the businesses of Arusha which depend on tourism hope that tourist numbers will start to increase. But the wider question remains, will the sector recover soon, and will the local community feel confident again about its future? Abubakar Famau, BBC, Arusha.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwacha. Still to come, Mimi will have all the sports and back to the mosque. How it feels to pray together again after 3 months of lockdown. I'm Peter Okwoche. This is Focus on Africa. Now, right around the world, places of worship have started welcoming back their congregations. In Nigeria, churches and mosques are opening their doors again in the capital, Abuja, as well as the commercial hub, Lagos, after about 3 months lockdown. For Muslims, it meant the entire month of Ramadan had to be observed under lockdown. So now that the restrictions are easing, what has changed for worshippers? Habiba Musa Ahmad shared her experience as she rejoined the Othman Ibn Affan mosque in Abuja.
For people like me that normally find solace in the mosque, I'm a normal mosque goer. I try as much as possible, to meet Juma prayers. So with that taken away, it felt very foreign. Obviously, your prayers can be answered at home, but if you're used to feeling that connection in God's house, it can be very difficult. It came upon Ramadan, so within that period we took time to pray, to really just come closer to our deen. So alhamdulillah, we're really happy that the mosque is open and other places of worship has been opened. The first thing I noticed is the measures they've taken at the gate in terms of the temperature check, and then obviously you're asked to wear your face mask. You can't enter without it, and immediately a hand sanitizer is presented to you. You're also given a nylon to put your shoes in. Upon entering the mosque, which before it was kind of more congested, everybody would stand up together, but now there's social distancing in place and there's just a sense of peace and happiness. I definitely have not seen any handshaking or things like that, but it still hasn't taken away the fact of friendliness. Still people smile, there's a gentle wave. I saw a gentleman I kind of waved. So another lady I saw, normally I would, go and hug her, but I just gave her a nod and wave. So we just found different ways of, showing our greeting. Alhamdulillah, I've learned quite a few lessons, and the main lesson for me is just the reliance on Allah, keeping my spirituality in check, doing the right thing, because that's the only thing that can really get you through a pandemic or a disaster. For me, the positive I can take in terms of my worship is I feel a closer relationship with my Lord. With this lockdown and having to really sit down and pray all alone by yourself, it's like reintroducing myself to my religion all over again. So it's been kind of a form of training. I think it has helped me. I've learned that you have no power. Nobody knows the future, and that is why we're so happy that mosques are open and we can just put our reliance and faith in the Almighty.
That was Habiba Musa Ahmad speaking to us from the Othman Ibn Affan Mosque in Abuja. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports, and Mimi joins us now with some breaking news.
Yes, indeed, Peter. Thank you very much. In the past few minutes, the Premier League have issued a statement saying that players will be allowed to kneel before matches and during matches when the Premier League restarts next season. It also said that for the rest of the season, that players will have on the back of their T-shirts Black Lives Matter, and that there was no room for racism. So that's been breaking in the last few minutes. But football fans this week have been marking 10 years since South Africa hosted the World Cup in 2010. It was the first time that it was held on African soil, and one man who was there covering it is South African sportscaster, currently the host of Marawa TV, Robert Marawa joins us right now. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us. Wonderful memories for you, a great legacy for Africa. What are some of the memories that you have, and could we possibly see another African country hosted in the future?
Well, thank you so much, Mimi. Pleasure to be on your show on the BBC. Well, one thing I can tell you is that we can still hear the sound of that vuvuzela reverberating. It might have taken a lot of people by a shock and surprise, maybe irritated a few people, but it was an African World Cup. We've got to remember that we were not trying to emulate any other European or any other country that has hosted the World Cup before. We needed to give the world an experience, which is typically a South African one. And obviously the blowing of the vuvuzela has been part and parcel of the culture of South Africa Africa, as well as the celebration of the game of football. So I think in the long run, people got used to it, and it became really the signature tune for the World Cup. But it was a moment to embrace the world. It was a moment where we knew that prior to that, we had lost out on hosting the World Cup to Germany with the non-voting of a certain New Zealander who decided not to vote. But then 2010 was a platform for Africa to shine. And we certainly did. Shabalala's goal in the 55th minute is what we've been celebrating this week. And what a way to start against Mexico as well. And, for me, just the memories, it was cold as hell. But the bottom line is that it wasn't the typical summer World Cup, Mimi, in any long stretch of the imagination, but fond memories indeed.
Indeed, Robert. But also, let's move on to today. We've had some news in South Africa. The government has given the green light for clubs, of course, to begin training. What will be the protocol in place, and any idea when your league will restart?
Well, that is the problem. Yes, the government has gazetted that, but they still have to comply with certain protocols as well. They have to have a safety officer who's going to be there to give the go-ahead. They have to go and disinfect the venues right across. They still have to deal with the issue of traveling. What do they need to do with the traveling aspect? There's certain stadia, which in part were also built for the World Cup 2010, that have been closed down. Others that have to be converted into hospitals up until December. So clubs don't have access to those stadia. But yes, they have said they can go back to training. When the football will start is anybody's guess, because we're currently in lockdown level 3 right now, Mimi, which means that no football can happen at a professional level where there's contact sport that has to be dealt with. So training, yes, but playing of football, no, up until such time as government reduces the level. But it's also quite ironic that it happens at a time when there's a major spike as far as coronavirus numbers are concerned.
Indeed, that's true, Robert. Well, we hope to have you back in the future to discuss a lot more, especially about sponsorship rights. As we know, sponsors have been pulling out as well during the COVID-19. Thank you so much, Robert, for your time. So we're going to move on to Spain, where on Thursday, La Liga restarted their season, and that's since the coronavirus pandemic, which has been 3 months that it was suspended. It was marked by a match between Sevilla and Real Betis, and Sevilla, of course, getting that win against their opponents. And to athletics, the first ever virtual marathon and track and field social distancing meet was held between athletes from Norway and athletes from Kenya. Celestine Karone in Nairobi with more on the story.
There were no fans in the Bislett Stadium in Oslo as races kicked off in the exhibition event. The exhibition meet was the first international track and field meet since the coronavirus pandemic began earlier this year. The centerpiece was the 2,000-meter team race, a remote race where a group of Norwegian runners faced off against a team in Nairobi led by 1,500-meter world champion Timothy Cheruiyot. While celebrated as the first virtual athletics race, conditions made competition difficult. The Norwegians took the win as the wet and windy weather in the Kenyan capital slowed the favourites down. Despite the trouble, the teams were happy to have competed.
It was a great opportunity because we are out on track for around 5 months now because of the pandemics, COVID-19. So I'm happy we race well.
Sport was effectively shut down by the pandemic, and athletes around the world are eager to compete again. While uncertainty over COVID-19 continues, World Athletics authorities have put in place a plan to return to action in August. The Impossible Games might have given us a glimpse of what future events could look like. Celestine Karone, BBC News, Nairobi.
All right, Peter, that's all the sport from my home this week.
Many thanks, Mimi. Thank you very much indeed. And don't forget, you can get in touch with me on social media. I'm at Okwoche. But for now, that's it from Focus on Africa for today. Thanks for watching. See you again very soon. Bye.